All right. Well, thank you for having me here today. I'm from the Big Rapids area originally. Grew up about 45 minutes from here, so it's nice to be back. I live in Grand Rapids now. What I'm going to talk about is in 2002, I went to Albania, which, for those of you who don't know, is just north of Greece. And Albania was, in all honesty, it's kind of a memory, a distant memory, despite it being a very impactful part of my life. I was there and back within a week, so I spent more time on the airliner than I did on Albanian soil. I was 21 at the time. I was an adult. I wasn't really a grown-up, and for those of you who are adults and not yet grown up, you'll understand the difference when you grow up, if you grow up. But at the time, I was working at a film school called Compass Arts Film Academy, and I met a Australian man named Gavin, and he's a tall, gray, older gentleman who, even at a very young age, was almost like in a superhero comic book manner. He was able to basically destroy a very evil person. It's a great story, but it's a story for another time because I've only got like 12 minutes. But anyway, I met Gavin, and he took a great interest in my life, and he saw how I edit, how I kind of operate in the film world, and then he told me about this place in Albania that he wanted me to join him when he traveled in a couple weeks. And Albania at the time was pretty much broken because the communist regime had fallen maybe 10 years prior to that, and the government was pretty much run by mafioso. So it was in a really sad state, but it was kind of healing. It looked like a broken country that was trying to heal. And there was this little Hollander girl, woman I should say, named Justina, and I'm not really sure how she wound up in Albania, but she started this complex called God Loves Albania, which is pretty simple, a mission, kind of a mission refugee for the disabled. So she would travel around Albania and find these different disabled kids and kind of, bring them to this facility called God Loves Albania. And Gavin, who, again, he's a missionary, a pastor. He's done multiple things around the world. Got in touch with the Albanian people and went and visited and invited me to go there next time, which was only a couple weeks away. So as I boarded the plane, literally everything I told you about Albania was everything I knew. Nothing, okay? I'm a geographical idiot, so I knew where Europe was, but I had no idea where Albania was. But I was 21, and I got offered to go on an international adventure with, like this old wizard dude. And so I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to that. Why would I miss that? So I boarded the plane, and I had an assistant go with me. She was 19, and she knew nothing more about the trip than I did. And when I say that Albania is kind of a distant memory, that's my Brian Williams defense. I might not remember everything beat by beat. So I just want to throw that out there right now. But cell phones weren't cameras in 2003, so I didn't really have any means to capture the moment. And I'd never been away from North America. Unlike Martin, who speaks like 7 languages, I speak English, American English, and I've got a pretty good hold on Canadian, but that's about it. So international travel was nothing I planned on pursuing, and given that whenever I travel, I'm constantly harassed by my paralysis. It wasn't an incredibly fun trip. It wasn't an easy trip by any means. So anyway, we landed in Vienna and met up with Gavin, and then from Vienna we were flying to Albania. But the thing is, you go from America to Austria, and you're on like this giant plane that's got hundreds of people in it. Well, when you're flying from Austria to Albania, it's like only a couple. I don't know. It's really short, like 3 miles. I don't know, 4 miles. No, it's way further than that. But anyway, we were on a very small, rickety plane. Like, you know, Tailspin? Are you guys too young for Tailspin and Launchpad McQuack? All right, anyway. So we landed in Albania and in this itty-bitty airplane, and I learned that my wheelchair didn't make the flight, which sucked because I was, you know, paralyzed still, even in Europe. So that leads me to kind of the first thing I learned about Albania was don't try and take a 300-pound wheelchair on an airplane used to transport goats. Just put that in the back of your mind. So for 4 days, I was pushed around Albania in like a glorified office chair, essentially. And it was humbling, and it led to a lot of health issues that, again, I've only got 12 minutes, so I can't go into those right now. But I want to talk more about the facility because Albania, even though the mountains were beautiful and the people are beautiful, you know, it being a war-torn country, there was a lot of danger. And because Jasina did such a good job making this God Loves Albania hospitable, they were under constant threat. So they had like armed guards with AK-47s, and they built up like big walls and had dogs, and it's like, holy cow, what did I just get myself into? But we pulled in, and we pulled into the facility, and it was kind of horseshoe-shaped, and in the middle was the social area where most of the young men hang out. The facility was mostly men, but there were some women as well. There was a decent-sized staff, and they didn't make much of anything, if anything at all. There was a teaching and a cooking staff, and there were teachers and physical therapists and others to, you know, kind of help these kids, these disabled kids, throughout their, you know, help them feel better and, you know, give them a place to belong. So I took as much time as I could to mingle with them, and everyone had an amazing story. But perhaps the most touching story was a story of a boy named Hermes, who was maybe 7 or 8 years old, and he had some ailment that rendered his legs useless, and he got around in a power chair poorly, but it was remarkable because he was the happiest kid I think I've ever seen. Okay, and he, you know, constantly wet himself, and he had this terrible chair, but he always smiled. He even fell on the floor once, like out of his chair, and started laughing, which I've fallen on the floor, and it doesn't tickle, I'll say that. So anyways, Jasina did a great job in creating this community to care for these people. Unfortunately, when I started researching, looking back a few months ago, I found out that the facility did close due to insufficient funding. But I was bummed out. I was bummed until I heard about some of the people that I met. Again, this was about 10 years ago. Jasina wrote this. There was a couple who got married, and they're now church elders. One was in a chair, the boy was in a chair, and the woman was just, I don't know, just this nice woman. Several others ended up getting married, and some of the residents ended up starting their own foundation. So they're now helping other people in Albania. 5 of the people that she helped take care of ended up going to college, which is remarkable in Albania. And unfortunately, little Hermes, the little happy boy, he died at the age of 20, which is sad. But there's something about the Albanian culture that I've yet to really disclose, and that's that in Albania, they're very proud people, from what I understand. They're very beautiful people, and to be different is kind of socially unacceptable. I mean, when I say different, I mean to be physically different is kind of socially unacceptable. And the story of this Hermes boy was when Jasina found him, he was living in a barn with a goat. because his family didn't want him. You know, he's just this little happy kid who couldn't walk, and his family just completely discarded him. Of course, that would never happen in America, we don't think, because we have what's called the ADA, which I've got mixed feelings about. Again, that's another topic. As I started to finish up this essay, I thought about what I really, really learned in Albania. Because when I went to Albania, I didn't know why I was going. But there are two more things that I've learned from my experience. The first is that good things don't have to last forever in order for them to be impactful. Okay, it really sucks when good things end. It does. You know, you lose a job. That's terrible. You know, you have to move away from friends and family. That's terrible. But just because those things might not exist doesn't mean that they're not still impacting someone's life. Okay, there's a song by the band called The Editors, and there's a great stanza in it that says, "Every little part of your life will mean something to someone." Okay, think about that. When you open the door for someone, when you help someone, when you give aid to someone, when you say hi to someone, when you smile to someone, when you're mean to someone, every little thing you do, every little action is going to impact someone in some way. The last thing I learned was, not to get all Bono or anything like that. I'm not a big fan of our government. I'll just throw that out right now. But it doesn't take tens and thousands of pieces of paper and government action, and I mean, they call it acts, right? I mean, like they act at all. It doesn't take all of that to make a community better. Okay, Jacina knew that. She knew that there was only one thing it really took, and that was love. Go Bulldogs.